천이 체제트는 대저를 점초 충내 적보로 이제 대백인의 손담나 원제 담전전 모만을 와라 전조보도 도제 연제도 가딘 제는 고르를 뭐지 도담 샤르시 공배 송도서 동년들아래도 샤만치 도저스시 우전도고 도자로는 동년 연도도 샤라이 세원제 고르도소로 냠도도 베서쇼 제바도 텐더로 펜베 도자랍데 세저 사전 로버저도 수 와데 사벨라 마레 모제 다게 조르 베메다노슈 가든 셴버고네 제소데 고소도 제고도 저도 수 나모하이 깨달로다 누진게 전범다다 메이께는 도와고 제다게 진선바라 탐제게도 다게 쳐대도 다 최내 세자 건데 남수주 되바텔 최 세슈와레라 대값소 봐봐 도모테가 개 냠렌테 두세메다 보임바 사제 동갈 보임바 최단주 동시다 메베임바 양엘렌데 봐 시와임바 다 초주 dom시다 실라 샤페 거네 돈데 대시 메다 대시 덴바시 대시당 안에 텔레바 13호 전에 메타 저도 대시 국고라는 13호 소유 말이 나와 대시도 줘봐도 가르침 버려 줘봐도 아니 개solongke domba shude nyangsolaya thangu tedar machuno de genyeshi domba shude ndorno chulne sore chulmanena silake tenge julen jongomari tendele tende chulne 아니 실하게 등에 줄은 정말 잡아라 퇴석 비셔럽 된 거를 되는 때는 술내 퇴도 삼된 배세 다 삼된 바 되기 잡아 어디 가르쳐서 무슨 냠슬로 와야 되래 냠슬로야 될어야 아니 실 신의 당 라통 신의 될어야 줄 때는 땡제게 신의 때문에 신의 라서 신의 뜻을 신도 가르쳐버려 샘시월 만에 나하게 메토거래 다음에 또 싫어 세계에 무슨 고아도 많이 봐 영화지 거래 영화야 보지 템버리 잡을라 질 퇴성도 싫어 아니 제다도 아니 개초로 아니 개nye 다 가다 라바 대한 존도르드노 라바 추듬지 라바 세한테 실라 세한테 대한 레저 켈라 판자실라 판자실라데 야보소 테레 야바이나 시텔라 때네 아니 시네다 나도 줄이체 요래 테네르 때네 다좀다 컴바토고 요래 아니 저 갈보찰라 넨텐스 년도 대비해 냠내 쳐서도 너바초 초셔봐. 그 칼치무 지바래. 너초 초셔서 타일랜드, 바르마, 스리랑카 소비 겐지 소비. 되네. 내가 세그 나마 갱어 좀 딩딩 좀 세양 되네 그 트러바 쳐보 많이 베세 se le chaval se ga mense 가르쳐 버려 세서 세 그냥 안에 그 아니 제보로야 그 이점 마음 숨좀 텔레 라서도 냐르메로래 세그 내말이야 되나시 그 여제야 되나시 그 막버도 sengu lakbe cham echo bare ta tenso sengu singe di shubu chaka yorwa chizu tini gelo domba le chete nyake tenso ke uya lakbe singe yomare nyarge yomare tende chino dosho chokshi chene shilake tenge nyamsolani dachompe kompato yor tenya nyamleta nane khalshishu che medak pata meduk pata medak pata yaya kombala tene ane longcho se longcho se ke ne mala yo che la sama panjor longcho ta kodama se panjor longcho la chakse te ta jite pala panjor longcho la chakse chibo yabare tene ta nyarangi ta sosa tarbi dambeke dambashuna nyamsalani ane nyamsalani chate de choksi chigi se de choksi de kamchibote ta de choksi yoya ke sawandawote mita pati yaya gambale tene ta panjo longjo le nimbo naba shade chuyi bowa tabo namkin jasu tabo dangki nilam tabo kala ya metak vera shiri tenya tene nyedu baki karma rabri marme to joma sebo chobunto nalam lo ta te tabo deshe shonam detar ta yaya nimo chor ma nyan ni ya sebo kapsola ya karma rabri marme to ti chor tetan lende chona tamchi jole cho tejo shebo shalom ko kain da dejo shebo degas dekpache message gyapo so sobache ranke samne yo deno saje ta bai te saje ka katima me ba ya chorgyo tende chorola tene de lo cho la chakse ke chwate wone me ba cha de lo cho le ni bo me de lo cho go korgre de tarvata tamjisen badobar sabala de parche ta de so de lochul sunangje sumba sunna pe kanjen jol pe sha ne melere banashi kon de lochul sunangje sibe danger se khalu de namle ta bare so do melere khay lebata naku ke namlu da de thorshare tinde gitene tula ngenjo ya ko che yongdu ene doba nyamle chede na ne doba kompa to baro ta ngara so la ga parche to de ta de long chu la chakshe te chwa te ma chu ma to ba dang ane po yi mo la cha pa mo yi po la cha pa chakse te ta ti ni ge ta ngando jikte pa yina ya ta ti ki on yor na kale ma bu te tu ba mu sho ane azu choba yena ta tiki parchita mara senta ta te imbare te so ta chakse pangvar chabala ane meduba gomne meduba je sumchi sotu te so shib chabu che gom te tutu ta tursa la sabala ndone ane meshine nima nyi ane ro tene papa 반바도 루바다 유바 어떻게 때네 안에 때네 세바테 매바 차도 대셔서 파르치 치슈 티니테 메탁 바다 메두 바곰발 때네 때가도 타라바다 탐시좀 봐 더블셔발라 다 파르치 쪼 티니 바래 테 티니 그 누바다 마차도요 테마도 controllo sova tapa samjita sunga dawa samjita tese chik shela to chazo nyamle thal chebe samjiki ta tingi te deba to ma cha to go yoma teso de te kalbu chela nenten se de la ma to thona chebo chego do pe kanje ji jongke shada chola lobjo she ati che thombo tan namba manda mabu ye ba so 토nhập 사다체 Tavala Yena, Ranton, the Shendos, the Yachichum. Then they take a Debulam de Savasang Dorje to be raised, and good Yishik water, Tony Chipse. My owner and the mentioned over the church Dom Shetan. And Dembashi, Pagbe Dembashi. Tell the Tonashida, Mashaba, Tensun Pechi, Le Tambo, Beck, Lochon Shadam. Gonzo the baby, Masubek, Tomboji Jangoyano, Tomboji Shingayavano, Tomboji Yamlechava, Tenation, Lama, how much of the single. Then Gonzo Usum Tawata Pasha, the Nyaranke. Nyamsulaya kita tanda metak pata metem pata kola metak pata metu kola ya sabsi yabuji gom chop se tezor pata gom se ter metak ba gom se metu ba gom so kor metu pata metak ba gom na karipeng kres nyomo ba kate kres nyomo ba ter kate na 안에 패도 가려요. 아니 뭐 차다 모습 그걸 잡아도 차다 모습 다티 식도는 그걸 동어지자도 다르게요 바로. 대소서 또 년도 대백이 냠란 아수도시라 야부여래라 대소상 아주 특별 임죽세 년도 대백이 따금 전적에 남샤서 아주雄起不能了 살보여래. 대태 Tell Tonang similar to Jargo the Karchambudu.
The Dharma refers to objects of knowledge, and it includes all objects of knowledge within samsara, nirvana, and the path. This also includes the teachings, of course, of the general vehicle of the Buddha Dharma, which primarily focus on the fact that all conditioned things are impermanent, that all defiled phenomena are painful, that all phenomena are empty and devoid of self, and that nirvana is peace. These four statements, these four summaries of the Dharma teaching, are the fundamental teachings of the Buddha. The teachings on the Four Truths, including the 16 aspects of impermanence and so on. This kind of topic forms the basis of study and practice for the general vehicle of the Buddha Dharma. And these topics are explained and studied in great detail. The view and the conduct of the general vehicle of the Buddha Dharma are so extremely important. When we speak about the conduct, this refers to maintaining the commitments, such as the vows of a novice or a fully ordained monk, or even the vows of individual liberation, the vows of a householder practitioner. One receives those vows and then remains within the state of the discipline of upholding them. Because without discipline, without maintaining discipline, it's not possible for the samadhi, the meditation of shamatha and vipassana to arise within our experience. And we need that kind of samadhi, that kind of meditative experience in order for wisdom to arise within us. This is why it is taught that with the foundation of discipline, we should learn and reflect and then bring this into our experience through meditation. So that means that we have to actually practice what we have learned. Practicing shamatha and vipassana is extremely important. There are many types of shamatha. Shamatha, which takes an object, shamatha, which is free from an object or a support. Shamatha is extremely important for us because if the mind does not remain calmly, if we are unable to practice shamatha, then we will be unable to see clearly. That is to say, we will be unable to train in vipassana. And vipassana here in this context of the general vehicle refers to this wisdom that realizes that there is no self. It's important that we don't just leave that at the level of a conceptual understanding, but that we actually come to gain a direct personal experience of this. And in order to do so, we need the wisdom that arises from learning the Dharma, listening to the Dharma teachings and contemplating them. But to be able to gain that type of wisdom, again, we have to have a foundation of discipline. And discipline here refers to the different types of vows, receiving and maintaining the vow of a householder practitioner, the vow of a novice monastic, or the vow of a fully ordained monastic practitioner. Maintaining any of these vows is what is called discipline, in Sanskrit, shila. We speak about the pancha shila, the 5 types of discipline, or the 5 precepts. And if one keeps these, then this becomes the foundation for Buddhist practice. It becomes the foundation for practicing shamatha or practicing vipassana. And through maintaining discipline as the foundation and training in the practices like shamatha and vipassana, practitioners of the general vehicle of the Buddha Dharma train and then eventually attain the state of arhatship. This is something that's extremely important, and important things are worth repeating. In general, we can say the foundational perspective of the general vehicle, or the vehicle of the Shravakas, is to have few desires and to be content with what one has. When we look at the way that practitioners in places like Thailand, Burma, and Sri Lanka practice the Dharma, they keep just enough of the necessities for life in terms of food, in terms of clothing, and in terms of their other possessions. They have just enough, just what they need. And the quality is just mediocre quality, nothing too fancy. In terms of food, they don't eat elaborate meals, but of course they do eat, because we all need food to maintain the health of our physical body. In terms of clothing, yes, they keep enough clothes so they can change clothes, but that means 2 sets of clothing so that you can wash one and wear one, or at most 3. In fact, they're not allowed to keep more clothing than this. And in terms of their possessions and various items that they use for personal use, again, it's very similar. They just keep the bare minimum to have enough. And in particular, those who maintain the monastic vows in this system of practice are not allowed to touch gold and silver. And here in the modern context, that also applies to money, which is in paper form. So those who are maintaining the vows of fully ordained monastics in this system of practice do not even touch money. They maintain the practice of keeping few desires and being content with what they have. And on the basis of that perspective, they train in shamatha and vipassana and attain the state of arhatship. This practice is so important, and among the most important practices for practitioners following this system of practice is the emphasis on impermanence, contemplating impermanence, and contemplating the ugly or unpleasant nature of the object of desire. Impermanence is something that is contemplated again and again, repeatedly, in order to reduce attachments to wealth, enjoyments, food, pleasure, money, and so on. Because when one really contemplates impermanence repeatedly, then the attachment to those kind of worldly sense pleasures is reduced. Worldly people are completely caught up in our attachment to food, to the sense pleasures, to wealth and enjoyments. But practitioners who are training in the system of the general vehicle of Buddhist practice take the vows of individual liberation, and in order to uphold those vows, they maintain an attitude wherein they reduce their desires and train to feel content with whatever possessions they have. When they take the vows of individual liberation, they're making a commitment. I will be like this. I will have few desires and feel content with what I have. And I will train in impermanence again and again and again. And that type of training or contemplation in impermanence is extremely beneficial. The type of contemplation wherein one contemplates the fact that wealth and enjoyments don't have any real essence. They're not truly meaningful. They're so temporary, just like a bubble forming on the surface of water, just like a rainbow appearing in the sky, just like last night's dream. They appear for a moment, but they don't last. And they recite verses as well, like, for example, the verse that the Buddha spoke, which teaches that all conditioned things should be seen to be like a shooting star, an optical illusion, a flickering candle, a dream, a flash of lightning, and so on. A dewdrop on the blade of grass. We should see all conditioned phenomena as being like that. And practitioners in this system would recite a verse like that right when they wake up. All conditioned things are just like a shooting star, like a flickering lamp, like an optical illusion, and so on. And also, the verse that mentions that all phenomena arise from causes, and that the sage taught the way that those causes can come to an end. This is the teaching of the Buddha. Do not engage in any non-virtue, engage in a wealth of virtue and tame your own mind. This is the Buddha's teaching. So they recite these kind of verses that include the stainless teaching of our teacher, the Buddha. And through reciting those verses, then they apply them in practice, reducing their attachment to the sense pleasures, to wealth and enjoyments, and really thinking to themselves, there's no point to be attached to wealth and enjoyments. These things are not truly meaningful. These things will fool me. These things will get in the way. These things are obstacles to my path that would lead to the accomplishment of liberation. And so they feel a sense of revulsion for the sense pleasures. Like, for example, the practitioners in the snowy land of Tibet. An excellent example of a practitioner with that type of attitude is Milarepa. Milarepa, when he looked upon the sense pleasures, he regarded them not only as being not meaningful, but he regarded them as something that was to be completely turned away from. Like, for example, spit. Like, for example, snot. Like, he just wanted to completely, something that we just throw away and leave totally behind. This is the way that Milarepa regarded the sense pleasures. And as a result of that kind of attitude, that kind of genuine renunciation that arose within his mind stream, through that he was able to practice such that he gained great accomplishment in his lifetime. So these things are obstacles for us. Our attachment to the sense pleasures and wealth is an obstacle for us. Likewise, the lust and attachment that is felt between men and women is an obstacle. Worldly people have a lot of difficulty and get in a lot of fights because of that kind of attachment. And for Dharma practitioners, that type of attachment is an obstacle for us. It is a mara, or an obstacle. And so as a method for clearing away that type of attachment, in the general vehicle of the Buddha Dharma, there is a practice of contemplating the unpleasant or ugly nature of the object of desire, acknowledging that the human body is comprised of 36 impure substances. And practitioners in this system of the general vehicle will actually go to places like cremation grounds. They will go to places like graveyards where there are dead bodies and look at the dead bodies, contemplate them. This is what a body looks like when it's only 1 or 2 days old. This is what it looks like when it starts to rot and to fall apart. And they will observe actually a corpse as it goes through the process of decomposition as a way of really clearing away any type of attachment and craving that they would feel, or lust that they would feel towards a human body. And so these kind of methods of contemplating impermanence, of contemplating or meditating upon the ugly or unpleasant nature of the object of desire, these are methods that clear away attachment, the attachments that otherwise stand as obstacles to our attainment of liberation and omniscience. It's not enough to just pray that we won't have attachment. It's not enough to just hope or recite some mantras or do a little tiny bit of shamatha and vipassana and have this idea that that's going to clear away all of our attachments. It's not powerful enough to overcome our attachment just to hope or pray. Doing actual practice, the actual practice of the meditation or contemplation on impermanence and the unpleasant nature of the object of desire, these are effective in overcoming our attachment. So things that are extremely important, again, are worth repeating. And it's important for us to really be aware of the importance of these kind of practices. Sometimes in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, we have this idea that, well, our studies are so high, we have such a high level of study, and we get caught up in immediately jumping into the debate between emptiness of self and other emptiness, Rangtong and Shentong, and then we start talking about Vajrayana practice and the Kayas and wisdoms, and we want to really get involved in discussing immediately, jumping right into this perspective on the Kayas and wisdoms. But actually, the foundation for our practice are the 4 seals of the Dharma. That should be the foundation for our practice, the 4 truths. And sometimes we don't pay enough attention to that. We think, oh, that's just for beginners, actually. I'm involved in studying and learning about and knowing about the higher aspects of the Buddha Dharma. But actually, the great masters of the past have said that forget about the view of Madhyamaka and mind only. We're not even practicing the general practices of the Shravakayana. We're not even practicing the real contemplations on impermanence and the unpleasant nature of the object of desire. We're setting those aside. We don't meditate upon that, and we should meditate upon that because those contemplations benefit us. It is very helpful to meditate on impermanence. It's very helpful to meditate on the unpleasant nature of objects of desire. How does it help us to do this kind of meditation? It helps us in that it reduces our negative emotions. And how does it help to have fewer negative emotions? How does that benefit us? Well, when we can overcome our attachment and our aggression and our stupidity, what we are doing is overcoming the root of samsara. Attachment and anger and stupidity are the roots of taking rebirth in samsara. And if we are able to destroy or to overcome that, then we're able to cross over the ocean of this pain of samsara. So this is why these practices that we find in the vehicle of the Shravakas are extremely important. And this is also why we talk about training in the different vehicles step by step, proceeding step by step through the vehicles of practice. It's very beneficial to learn about the view, the meditation, the conduct, and the result of the Shravaka path. This is taught very clearly in our scriptures as well. And so it's important for us not only to pay attention to that, but to actually apply those teachings directly and personally to our own experience.
Tatetava nyamne chebin devuti dajumbe kombo das khaleta das dongal teke suri dongal teke ti chada mosome chada mosom teke lenge baya ti sagire rangla rani dul jarhiya thiri she dul jarhiya thiri Rashi tami chile dole jarketi chada masumre tena ne chaba am seba se tele tene ane longa yeso chol te on jur lengembo mombosa namne dongali yom tata ya deji me lodi samle deji me ba tene yongo yore Tendele Nietu Debe Chirin Yomoba Toso Chita Cherato Chava Mosu Tina Sutu and then Dungartamjiki Zawati Chava Sebate Teletene Pilgiva Sonsa Chava Mosu Kidati Chongo Yori Jumsultia Tangi Fondi Shavanashi Metapada Mitempa Metapada or Metapada Midupat Yaya Gomba Yorela Tension to that Donald Tishan or Donald Machine, the Donald Duty Duty Pangto Chegamari, that Donald Market Norman Yagi Simo for the Donald number, no soba, Chiki, Donald Jalan Mentabari. Ngeso so ke dongal set meba nyawala chadang ke dongal set meba eta letekam ke dongal set meba antada ga osum to thoya ke thendo so 전도설로 간대 같은데 동아리도 아는 로아 메게 전도로 잠정 마셔 가시니 되는 얘네 차와치고 된데 요살라요 되니 가시가 도지되는 집에 가서 마헬라소가 차와치고 나라 아니 타파 퉁퉁 지다리 샤기도 와 아니 차위 동안 차위 동안 쇠지가 배워를 퉁돌 대신도 직시적으로 사위 동안 뭐 something 배워를 대소도 계속 그 동안을 쇠지가 배래 사다 메들 하마이라데 대화다 동안 뺄말에 얘네야 대화 유기 주도거든 근데 메들 하이 동안 때도 간지레서는 세 좋아 친구 저는 툭 다제베게 세 좋아 친구 사마디 직파이 소리 태양도 제바서는 어서 아주 양소요하게 개처리 대소도 메다바다 동화다 안사 아버지 냠네 저도 당내 또 보셔라 니한테 따와도 당내 또 보셔라 메다 동화로 동 다음에서 어떻게 전에 엠바렐라 대소도 니한테게 도쇼 척시 제발라 페바스 버려 텐들 때에 신라지 땡이지 줄인 종에다 아니 다좀 바꿔봐 telling 준수 치료요 다좀 봐서요 텐들 그냥 레피도 보지 제야게 그런 치다다고 이해도 그래 냠술라 말아도 소소 감사라라래 다 되나는 되니 다 택신 쓰셔야 돼 택신을 가서 돕니 되네 삽시 tö들 세근데 다시다 tö버제다 잡아도 somos tombañe tabarela theo 좀 맹아가 lok다고 전에 아니 바테 아두샤키 케베초 다음에 주는 떡바이 준비초 심지 돌와이 소아 대거라 가상에 대신 돌도 잡아래 다 연된지 쇼 생각될 때 연된지 쇼때 가르에서 제도 그 연된 장비 연된 아주 남는 뭐 배워 연대 탐 제시나는 쇼도 저런 펜스 쳐버들이 타일 베스임제 탐 저런 펜당도 로슈치 뭐 솔라 연나다 때 연대 좀 버렸어 연대 쪽 펜스 쳐와니
The result of training in this system of practice of the general vehicle is that we attain the state of arhatship. So an arhat is someone who is a foe destroyer. Who is our foe? Who's the enemy? The enemy is whoever or whatever brings us suffering. What does that? It's our own attachment and anger and stupidity. And this is what leads us to engage in negative karma. And that kind of negative karma is what causes us to experience suffering. We cause pain for ourselves, we cause pain for others when we get caught up in the negative emotions of attachment, aggression, and stupidity, and when we act out of those negative emotions. So this causes difficulty and pain for everyone, for ourselves and others as well. Again, what does that? It's attachment and anger and stupidity. So attachment and craving are problematic because we fall under their power. We get caught up in our own attachment and our craving, and on the basis of that then our body, our speech, and our mind all fall under the sway of that kind of attachment, and we do a lot of harmful things. We harm people, and then when we do things that are harmful, we have to experience the results of that harm. And that's an eventual result that we have to experience, which is going to be painful, but even immediately, it's painful. We're not happy, we're not comfortable when we engage in that kind of attachment. And so this is why in the system of the Shravakas, the focus of practice, of course, is on, in general, overcoming the negative emotions, but in particular, the focus is on attachment. overcoming attachment, aversion, and stupidity, but specifically attachment, which leads to so much suffering. Attachment and craving is the cause, in this system of practice, is considered to be a primary cause of pain and suffering. And so through training in the practices of the system of the general vehicle of Buddha Dharma, one overcomes the enemy of attachment, aggression, and stupidity, these three poisons. How do they do that? I already mentioned, primarily through contemplating impermanence and through contemplating the unpleasant or ugly nature of the object of desire, through training in that kind of meditation again and again and again and again. And also, in addition to that, it's actually important to simply be able to identify suffering. If we're not aware of suffering, if we're not able to identify suffering, then we will never give rise to the wish to overcome the causes of that suffering. So we have to identify, to acknowledge the fact that we are suffering, to be aware of that. We have to acknowledge that actually every state within samsara is painful, starting from the lowest hell and going all the way up to and including the summit of cyclic existence, the summit of samsara, the highest point in samsara. Even here, one is never free from the net of suffering, the net of pain. And in particular, within the lower realms, as we know, in the hell realms, beings experience the unbearable suffering of heat and cold. In the hungry ghost realms, they experience the unbearable suffering of hunger and thirst. And in the human realm, in the animal realm, which we can see ourselves, we see the suffering that animals experience. We see the way that people are not kind. Human beings are not kind to animals. We see the way that human beings leave animals out in a hot place to burn under the sun. I was recently in Bodh Gaya, Rinpoche says, and I saw the buffaloes there, the water buffaloes left out in the hot sun, tied to a very, very short rope so they couldn't go to seek shade. How painful. How painful the suffering that animals experience of being trapped in hot or cold places, the suffering of eating one another and the fear of being eaten by another animal. This is something that all of us have seen directly with our own eyes. And so we know that there is unbearable suffering that is experienced by beings in the lower realms. And then what about the higher realms? What about the realms of gods, humans, and demigods? In these three realms, beings experience pain and pleasure in alternation. However, the pleasure itself, while pleasure is present, at the same time, there is also always some kind of discomfort, some kind of pain. So when we talk about an example, like what is the pleasure in the higher realms, the pleasure of gods and humans, what is it like? It's said that it's like eating a delicious meal that has been poisoned. And that is what it is like, experiencing this delicious meal, but at the same time, it's poisoned. And actually, we all know this personally and directly in our own experience, that this is what the pleasures, the so-called pleasures of the human realm are like. And so contemplating impermanence, contemplating suffering, being aware of emptiness and the absence of self. This is something that is taught and is extremely important in the general vehicle of the Buddha Dharma, the Shravakayana. And again, in particular, these teachings focus also on the practitioner cultivating a sense of few desires and having a feeling of contentment with whatever it is that we have. This is beneficial because it creates a space for practicing so that there is an opportunity for samadhi, for meditation, to arise within our experience. And practitioners who train in this system of practice progress through the different stages leading to the state of arhatship. First, they enter the state of a stream enterer, and then a once returner, and then a non-returner, and then finally the state of arhatship. This kind of practice is genuine and authentic practice. The pith instructions and oral instructions for training in this system of practice are present. They exist in our world. We all could practice that. We all have a choice, the opportunity, if we simply choose to do so. What about the Mahayana? I spoke previously about the Buddha's statement where he said, I have encountered a Dharma which is profound, peaceful, and simple. And the statement about simplicity is a reference to the Mahayana view, which is free from the 4 extremes and the 8 conceptual complexities. This is a reference to the view of profound emptiness, free from any type of conceptual elaboration. The way that these teachings are expressed in the tradition of the Pith instructions include teachings like those that I began sharing with you the other day, the teachings from the great master Atisha, who taught us that the supreme form of learnedness is to have realized the absence of self. He said the supreme form of discipline is to have tamed our own mind. I mentioned these points already the other day. He additionally mentioned that the supreme good quality, and there are lots of types of good qualities in the world, right? There are good qualities that we're just born with, that someone is born with, and there are other qualities that we cultivate and learn. And what is the one, though, that is supreme? What is the supreme good quality? What is the best possible quality? It is great altruism, to have an altruistic attitude. So whoever has that type of true, genuine altruism, that person is someone who is truly learned. So Atisha said, the supreme excellent quality is to have an altruistic attitude.
Tene Adishaki, Dama Chok, Doctor Hansel Latawai, Doctor Segendi. Ni Sematade, Ni Makuka Parto, Longa Yeson Jaba, Kadechi Jogoto, Te, She, Payu, Chikte, Sinte, Ane. Tunga Gap Samaimba, Tunsan Cholom Rondo San Yan, Najo Capsaya, Tempe Doctor Sinte, and Gosum Chichobati Chuta Tumbachi Chequia, the Karismaya Basonsa, Dama Chichok, Doctor Hansel Tawin.
Atisha also taught us that the supreme pith instruction is to always look at your own mind. Always. That means from the moment of waking up in the morning until the moment of going to sleep at night. We should always, with mindfulness, vigilance, and carefulness, check what is going on with my body, with my speech, and with my mind. And that means not just in our meditation sessions. It means also in between our meditation sessions as we go about our ordinary daily activities. It means while we're walking around, while we're sitting down, while we're eating, when we're lying down, and even when we're talking. We should be aware, we should be mindful, conscientious, and careful, and always check what is going on with my conduct of body, speech, and mind. What am I doing with my body, my speech, and my mind? Am I acting in a way that matches the Dharma or not? This is why Atisha said that the supreme pith instruction is to always look at your own mind.
Chutu Tumbata Yor Chabala, Tempata Sessi, Bayo, Tipti, Sina, and the said the Makuka Pardola, and the church of the Chicken Sagayora. Tendrich Chana, some Sekarachabatilla, De Tumnada, Matumnanda. Gosum Chichaba Tumachi Tunaina. 아니 매체 최치가 차고 열다 들리지 제바이나 아마 방선 녀만배 게릭테어 라시 카트도 열어라 독자 전인지 양타비 따위게 내로게 리바초 챔펠 제제스 제네 돈나냥도 쳐버져 러우 아니
It's so important that our 3 doors of body, speech, and mind are always conducted in accordance with the Dharma. That's really important. And if we are always mindful and conscientious and careful from the moment that we wake up in the morning until the moment that we go to sleep at night, if we're careful, then we can actually make sure that we are practicing the Dharma in accordance with how the Dharma is meant to be practiced. We can practice the Dharma correctly if we do that. You know, people always talk about retreat. It's like really something that people talk about. Oh, doing retreat, that's really famous, right? To practice retreat, so important. Well, whether or not we have the opportunity to go into retreat, if our body, speech, and mind are always conducted in accordance with the Dharma, our whole life is Dharma practice. And that means that we will naturally reduce the negative emotions, which is what we need to get rid of. And we will naturally cultivate love and compassion and bodhicitta, those things which we do need to cultivate. And that also means that experience and realization will naturally arise and quickly arise within our experience.
Mindfulness transheta transit pejuda mandala tangdwa the pejuda kaleche tangorese no goso choda tumbache goso choda jewache shibdalla tene chambata sheshe payu shede tikdisim ta sanchi chusun nada tende jewarede ta tesu tene paapton ani tene ta
Important things are worth mentioning again and again. And in particular, this idea of mindfulness is really popular in the modern world, right? People always talk about mindfulness. But the thing is that they use it, they apply it to all kinds of things. What is mindfulness meant for? Actually, it is meant, in the Buddhist context, which is where it comes from, this idea, to make sure that our body, speech, and mind are always acting in accordance with the Dharma. It is for that reason that we're meant to be mindful and conscientious and careful. And this is what is taught in the Buddhist teachings. But now people take this idea of mindfulness out of context and use it for all kinds of things. You know about all the various things that they use it for. But it's important for us to understand, actually, that it was taught in the context of the Dharma, where it is meant to ensure that our body, speech, and mind are actually following the practice of the Dharma.
Trenche yabu juyo na ataki shewa na she tunda tunsam nika kapsala nyamli cha tukun chagare te cha na tene mesi chio chingi chi sha yongdu nyamto chapra je jula mesi wa mesi bari.
In short, it is so important to apply mindfulness and conscientiousness. We need to first learn the Dharma and contemplate it, right? But then, if we want to actually apply the wisdom that we have acquired through learning and reflection, we have to have mindfulness. We have to be mindful and we have to be conscientious. And if we're able to do that, then we become able to practice not just in our meditation sessions. We can practice outside of our meditation sessions, in between our sessions. And if we do that, then our whole life becomes Dharma practice. And if our whole life becomes Dharma practice, it is impossible that we would not give rise to experience and realization. It's impossible that that wouldn't come about.
Many of you, means of monks and nuns, you did 3 year, 6 year, 9 year, 12 year retreat. For me, I not got opportunity to do long retreat. Only COVID time, yes, it helped me a lot because of COVID. But who saved me? When I think it saved me, Champa de Sheshe Payu thing yang thank you. Thinking of Japson. Tendel Tenanga Lodrom Mambosan there to Masu something in Jobatishirane. Tony Tenshi Payu go some take same manner. Oh, then think on Jobachubachesari. Take a lawyer, Yalev.
But I have been mindful and conscientious and careful. I rely on mindfulness and conscientiousness and carefulness. And because I do rely upon these three aspects of practice, I don't really feel so much regret, like, oh, I didn't really get the chance in my life to spend a lot of years in retreat. I don't have that kind of regret. But if I had not been careful to rely on mindfulness and conscientiousness and carefulness, then I absolutely would have regret of not having been able to spend time in retreat, right? Because I'm getting older now.
Sometimes I'm checking myself. If I die today, how I can handle my mind? So, few times, I'm some sickness came. One day I got dengue. Body cannot.
Wasn't even able to really move my body. Felt so heavy. And then I thought, wow, I wonder if I'm coming to the moment where the physical body and consciousness are going to part ways. And then I checked, and with mindfulness and conscientiousness and carefulness, and I felt, you know what? I'm actually, it's not going to be a problem. It's going to be fine. And then I started thinking, well, but I worry a little bit about my students. Was I really able yet to establish them on the path? That was my concern at that point. Why am I saying this to you? It's because always embracing our experience with mindfulness, with conscientiousness and carefulness is really important for all of the monks, for all of the nuns, for every single Dharma practitioner. It's something that each of us needs to consider as extremely important. Because honestly speaking, if we are doing maybe just a few hours of formal practice a day, and we think that we're going to get so much benefit out of just those couple of hours of formal practice, not likely to be enough, actually. It's important that we're aware of that. Especially in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, we have a tradition, it's actually a very beautiful one, of going in the presence of an experienced and realized guru and saying, please give me pith instructions, please give me pith instructions. It's actually a beautiful tradition. But the supreme pith instruction is always look at your own mind. We have to remember that, actually. It's really important, because sometimes we think, oh, pith instructions are something different than that. It's not. That's the supreme pith instruction.
다 토모티브 값을 넣어서게 녀보 다이시 봐봐. 매도 볼 거야. 아니 딱 버리지 밖에 녀보라 매도 볼 거야. 딱 저지 말라 다음에 봐 거야. 양나 넣어서게 녀보 매도 볼 거야. 세상에 녀보 잡아 거야. 때문에 녀보 tender longjong to logdo so gomya ta tende ki nyamle chesul pe thabo tende che shu yobare te menga ko logta bur chana kam su phaba dela kate peso yembe chok ta nyomo ba nyomo be yembe chok de kare kala ya rashi me be sheba de
The supreme remedy in the general vehicle of the Buddha Dharma, it's taught that the remedy for attachment is to contemplate the unpleasant nature of the object of attachment, or the remedy for grasping to things as lasting or as being permanent is to contemplate the fact of impermanence. The remedy to attachment to the self is to contemplate the fact that there is no self. Or sometimes we say again, the remedy to attachment is to contemplate the ugly or unpleasant nature of the object of desire. The remedy for anger is to contemplate or to meditate upon love. The remedy for stupidity is to meditate upon interdependence, dependent origination, the 12 links in the forwards and backwards progression, both, and so on. So this is a very nice tradition of practice. It's very beautiful, that tradition of practice. But here in the context of the tradition of the Pith instructions following the teachings of the Kadampa masters, it said that the supreme remedy, so the supreme remedy for all of our negative emotions, for all of them, is to know that nothing whatsoever is truly real.
Is there one sound too much or what? What? Huh? Huh? Outside. Okay.
I think it's that fan, maybe.
Yeah. I'm more smart than technology people.
Than all of us.
또 당화 주초 라시메바 샤바 상태 틀섬을 야고도 대다를 너무 최탐지 마다 마치 공어라 뎀바 딱반 되시 세마도 다시 전에 대들 너무 최탐지 나를 라시메바 인다 봐.
The supreme remedy is to know that all phenomena are not truly real, not truly established. In fact, all of these things that appear to us all the time, like right now, if we don't really check, if we don't really investigate, they seem real, they seem stable, solid, they seem like they're going to last. But if we check, if we really examine them, we find that they appear, but they're not truly established, they're not truly real.
텐티 접다게 촉상 아주 추냠래 전에 접어서 그래서 접어서는 가려서 원셔요 그래서 전토리요 원셔서 가도 생기심 신습시에 원셔요 전토리세도 요 강가는 요 실라서 봐 내가 날랐는데 요 날라왔던 톱이요 그래서 매 지금 말이 추이 kirk 말이 너무 불길해. 또 가다 또 전투스다 된다. kuchikra kumambutur tugaris, luchikla lumambutur tugaris, lasoba. Jadi tu me tuchu. Tu tendel tur tugaris. 다 티베 토바토레 잡수치스 근데 시시그리 뭐신게 전주 톡밤미도 생들어요. 대답게 원신다 전주층에 대해서 랑드시는 꼭거래야 양이 쓰기르다. 일루베 최양이 쓰기르. 대정랑 가서 세소야요 말이지. 세대 강을 송어서 녀몽도 같이 막 카트기도. 다 데리스. 좁다게 쳐. 좁아톱이 딱 돼. 녀몽 총이 있어. 다 랍대 녀몽 매봐들.
The supreme sign of accomplishment. When we practice the Dharma, we should gain some kind of accomplishment from our practice. We do, actually. Sometimes people talk about accomplishment in the sense of like clairvoyance or miracles. Like, oh, that person has clairvoyance. Clairvoyance here meaning the ability to know the minds of others. Or miraculous abilities like having attained freedom or independence in the context of the 5 elements, the 4, even you can say 5, right? Like you can't be burned by fire, or you couldn't be carried away by water. Someone who's able to fly through space. I mean, say, wow, these miraculous abilities, the ability to manifest or emanate many, many bodies from one single body, these kind of things, to remain with the upper part of the body blazing with fire and the lower part water. These kinds of things we consider to be miraculous displays. And sometimes people think, oh my gosh, look at these miracles, look at that clairvoyance, such a person has really attained accomplishment. Gyapsuchi, I take refuge, right? So this kind of sense of being impressed with miraculous displays or clairvoyance. This person, wow, how amazing, their miracles are just totally unobstructed, their clairvoyance is utterly unobstructed, so amazing. Well, we have to be a little bit careful because these kind of things can fool ourselves and others both. We can get kind of caught up in that. And the thing is that those aspects of clairvoyance and miracles, these are also deceptive phenomena. They're also deceptive. And so that shouldn't be our measure of accomplishment in practice. We shouldn't measure ourselves on that basis. The measure of accomplishment in practice is having fewer negative emotions. This is what can show us the level of our practice. So the supreme sign of accomplishment is to have fewer negative emotions. And ideally, none at all.
다kapsu papa ngazo rewate milutop de yore sanji te bara theba thanda simpo yobare tedeli tene nyamle che thumbo ji chene milu de kan la thoba che sanji ba che chona ta rabre tade sanji je 영야 시대 가려 된 것도 딱 간다신 것도 상지사리 섬로 땅데 아주 남쪽에 배주 땅데 간다시 상지사리 도면 랭유 출나 그 법로 취돼요 랭유 출다 출나게 저러다로 취돼요 티저로 텔레테타 타버려 쳐발라 뒤에 통주 지금 나를 타고 요도 로도 가시 또 밀리 로도 가시 밀리데나 다티 저번에 산제야 간데스 제사라다 간데스 저번에 산 간데스 제사라 산 젤로다 저번 토로게 같이 걸어다 실제 간대지를 냠린 간대지를 내가 좀 딱지 딴 것도
So here our aspiration Because here we are in a precious human body, right? We've attained a human body, and we're all people who have faith in the Buddha's teaching. We have faith in pure perception towards the Buddha's teaching. So our wish is to gain, ideally, a very high level of practice, such that in this very human body, we are able to gain accomplishment, that we're able to gain the state, to attain the state of Buddhahood. That would be best. That's the ideal situation. But we need to have an understanding, though, of what makes that possible. What is actually the basis for being able to attain Buddhahood in this very life? How could we do that? We should be able to use our own intellect to understand that, to understand how that's possible. Because actually, since beginningless time, we have been caught within the sphere of karma and the negative emotions and deluded experience. Right? We're caught within that bubble of karma, negative emotions, and delusion, or we're caught in the prison, you could say. We're locked in the prison of karma and negative emotions and confusion. So in this short time, in this human body, how is it that we could become free from that prison that we've been in since beginningless time? Right? How is it possible in this human body, in this life, to attain accomplishment? How can we attain Buddhahood in this life? There has to be a method, right? There has to be some kind of practice that we do. So what is it that we need to know, or what is it that we need to do in order to gain accomplishment in this life, to gain Buddhahood in this life? We should check. That's something that we need to actually understand, be able to understand.
What is the technique? What is the method? What kind of wisdom make this lifetime to gain high realization, say accomplishment, or gain Buddhahood? So please think today and tomorrow, day after, I want to hear one, two words from specifically new student, from new student. So we will keep this today here. Now comes the Papa Lock. Tumu Tekpala Matrapa, Tekchen ki Nyamle Nala, Tekpa Chimpe Nyamle Pyo Tang, Pyo Nanten Tang, Jeju Nanten Sori. Nika Kek, Deva Chegi Shinkam Sekatali Cheyori.
There is a teaching that we find in the Mahayana that is not taught in the general vehicle of the Buddha Dharma. It is found in the teachings of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition as well as in the teachings of the Chinese Buddhist tradition, in both. And this is the teaching about the pure realm of Dewachen, Sukhavati. In both of these traditions, we have faith and belief in this pure realm, the presence of this pure realm.
If the Tibetan Buddhist followers, if they see anyone die, or if they heard somebody dead, even when they see bugs and birds die, the first word, what they say, they were
may you be born, or may they be born in the pure realm of Buddha Amitabha, Sukhavati.
That is naturally Jangpa Des, you can took it in, you can took it and Swat Dana. Om Amidevari, Om Amidevari, Sanjava, Mission Commission Show said. Tinitaya, the Emma Home, Water Sanjina, what I is doing, what in the Tene, Wamayina, Chame Demete, Joe Pomokish, which it Tanto Chumpachene, as a Trombenane, that dancing, the Chame Demete, Chopatum, Deata, young Gerkin Dea, Carson, the Turn Codebo, the Cassalbo, Chelap Shampoo. Tati Jai Tolo Juriore, Gay Shandala Yore, Tati Nandur to Teta, Dewajan Checo Yori, the Jawat and Chewa Chavala, There's two nations. One is Tibetan nation, I just said it. Another is Chinese nation. Past, when I see the older generations Chinese, quite amazing. But they will not say Nihoma. They not say. Before Nihoma, they will say Omi Tofu. Very respect gesture is seriously this way or this, I don't know. Omi Tofu. The last minute, bye bye, she zai chen, then again, Omi Tofu. Ti 가르땡이 요르서나 산지 어바 매 신감을 이치 요바땡이 요르. 대 가르치주 어바 매게 신감을 이치 요나 예송을 이치 요바케 켈로. 예송다 답의 신감 이가 렉게 알라 이치 요바 슈크 고거리 딜 때네 기 개바생한테 dum나 사 닭부 신감을 째토바 메게 와차나 예소송 그 르데야 랭게 여바들 이타 슈게 이실lep도 대소자 잠메리케 나투케시 셰투 칙 당보데 아미타보서 칙 타마데 아미타보서 라베데 티베트 가르쳐 보지래.
In the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, if someone sees someone who has died, or even just like Rinpoche said, a bug or an animal or something, they would make the aspiration for that being to be born.
6 o'clock. Still, people keep coming and visiting, getting karmic connection, seeing karmic connection.
Liberation through seeing. This is a liberation through seeing. They come from very early in the morning, all the way until.
So I need to say thank you to all of you. Help of all of you with success. This is we success. This monastery is belong to all Buddhists, all devoted, even who are interested just to see, not need to be Buddhist. At some karmic print go in their heart, because they will say, "Oh, how beautiful!" Enough. Also, I keep saying, bring your cup, your own cup. Many of you not bring cup. They want to give tea. You
need to bring a cup so that you can have something for people to pour tea in when they come around and want to give you tea. I told them to make hot tea, delicious tea, and they did. They made a hot, delicious tea, but you don't have a cup.
Plastic nala chap malu, plastic chorbore, chat sabulu na subul negres ne mawala.
Also, I keep saying, right? Don't put hot liquids in plastic. It's harmful, actually, because then you drink it and then it's harmful for your body. So we shouldn't use plastic cups.
Luckily, there's some cups are taken out. So, okay. Cups of papala. They were saying, can't you check it? They were saying, Singapore, Chawasho, someone check it away. You see, you away.
So, again, Tibetans, when they see someone who has died, if they have a little bit of learning and a little bit of knowledge, then in addition to saying, may you be reborn in Dewa Chen, they would also say the mantra like Om Amiteva Shri. And then there's also this prayer, right? The short prayer of rebirth in Sukhawati, the Emaho Ngotsar Sangyen Nangwataye, right? Emaho, wondrous Buddha Amitayus, and so on. They would recite that kind of prayer. And in the past, actually, there was a very strong tradition among Tibetan people of reciting the Dewa Chen Manam. Karma Chak means Dewa Chen Manam. And people in the villages would sometimes get together to recite, or they would recite on their own. And it's been translated also into Chinese and other languages. And Rinpoche mentioned in English about how this tradition of Chinese people, right, when first meeting saying Amitofu, and then right upon leaving also saying Amitofu. So this mention of Amitabha at the first moment of meeting and at the last moment of parting is a sign of trust and belief in Buddha Amitabha's pure realm. That's what it indicates. And the other thing that's important is that when someone says that and has that kind of trust, what that means is they also believe in the three lower realms. They believe in the lower realms, they believe in the higher realms. You can understand that implicitly if someone says that Amitofu, it indicates that kind of belief both in the lower realms as well as in the pure realms. And what that means also is that it also indicates a belief in the fact that virtue leads to positive rebirths, like in the pure realms, and that non-virtue leads to rebirth in the lower realms. So you can understand kind of implicitly that kind of belief in the power of virtue and non-virtue simply in that statement that the Chinese people make when they traditionally when they would meet by saying Amitabha, Amitofu, or at the end saying Amitofu. So actually it's really important, that statement, because it indicates all of this other important aspects of the Dharma. So if we want to be reborn in Dewa Chen, in this realm of Buddha Amitabha, how can we do it? What are the conditions that lead to rebirth there? Can we just pray, may I be reborn in Buddha Amitabha's pure realm? Is that enough? What do you think?
Re, Dewa Chen cheviki juchik sanan digiri, kharasatete molam re, molam singete te ya ta ya gore te molam changbe ke thön sharan rugu marda.
On the one hand, yes, because that is one of the causes for rebirth in Buddha Amitabha's pure realm, to make aspirations. That is one of the causes. And so it's really good to do that. We should do that. Aspirations and prayers are really good, but just praying is not enough to get results.
Ta Dewa Chen chevi ju na ne kalchi shu de cho ni nyam sa la so cho ni karase meke ju pangwa chamche ki meke ju pong ki gewate membe geware gewa ju nyam sa la te ki dang ge yamba karase topsa sanju ba me shangam jap ta yana ju khande korsa na ju top chamba sa ju top chamba de karesa na so ni ki nyamle sa so ni nyamle se ti kawa so yor sa na ta tiksin ki shunga ga na le yore la ta kode wo chena jinso ngate tap ki chare ane trukba de shirabre sonza 파르도 봐 토끼 냠내디 야고 지체 톱나 또 주티래 주 남들 나는 도고나 빼샤다고 빼샤 망보인데 되는 티켓 공치 쳐서지 또 토그러 와 짜다라 토그러 짜다 오 빼테나 주 소니티 야타 주사 토그러 다테 ju choni saura cheballa ta lunga yesum ji le nyemba chasa ji bang to ba ji dang sonam ji cho zam ma se yi shi ji cho choni son ju ju bi nyamle ji xiama pu ta ba ya bu ji che to ba yin na ta ta ba chen le chebe gi ju nge tsang.
The most important cause for taking rebirth in Dewa Chen is to gather the 2 accumulations. That's the most important. Just engaging in the virtue of refraining from the 10 non-virtues, it's actually not enough. It's not enough because that's just a lower level of virtuous action. And even practicing the 10 virtues is not enough. Why? Well, what we are aiming to attain is rebirth in Buddha Amitabha's pure realm. That's something really special. And so what kind of cause is necessary to take rebirth there? An extremely powerful cause. An extremely powerful cause is required. So what is that powerful cause? That powerful cause is the 2 accumulations, gathering the 2 accumulations. And where is that practice taught? It's taught in all of the Mahayana texts. And an easy way of presenting it is as the 6 perfections. The first 5 of the 6 perfections, generosity and so forth, are the aspects of method. The 6th among the 6 perfections is the aspect of wisdom. And so practicing the 6 perfections is extremely important because this is it's a genuinely authentic practice that can serve as the cause for rebirth in Buddha Amitabha's pure realm. It's like, for example, if you want to fly on an airplane, you need the money to buy a ticket. If you have a lot of money, you can get a really expensive ticket. You can charter a flight, in fact. You can charter your own plane if you have enough money, right? So here we're talking about the cause for rebirth in Buddha Amitabha's pure realm. The cause is gathering the 2 accumulations. And if one really gathers the 2 accumulations very authentically, then we will become able to refrain from negative karma. Physical negative karma, verbal and mental negative karma. We can abandon all of that if we really gather the 2 accumulations. And so then we are not just gathering the accumulation of merit, and we need to gather not just the accumulation of merit, but also the accumulation of wisdom. And if we're able to gather the 2 accumulations together as a unity, if we're able to gather the 2 accumulations very authentically and very extensively, then this becomes the main cause for taking rebirth in Dewachen, in Sukhavati.
다 바로 지금 그 조티 인지 매지 14부 장고에 가르쳐 버려. 대단에 담보 진바스라고요. 생쇼 담보는 처법해야 돼. 진바치래. 저왜 고소도 되는 처법해야. 대외 학습지 개solong게 담바요게. 양의 처바 양 타봐. 난 처바 양 타봐. 오늘 던데 저도 두바 냠르시네. 대단라 풀나 자료 구성 토델에 처법해봐야 장 대답에 신초에 달려 처법해봐도 손놈 책이래 가려서나 풀 외쳐봐도 셰베 손놈 셰베 손놈 맹라 신초 담바스래.
It's really important that we study the 6 perfections really carefully and really learn about them very well. The first of the 6 perfections is generosity. Generosity includes making offerings to supreme objects, excellent objects. So, for example, making offerings to representations of awakened body, speech, and mind, or making offerings to Dharma practitioners, such as novice monastics or fully ordained monastics, or also yogis who are practicing in a very authentic way, genuinely practicing the Dharma. Actually, if we compare it to making offerings to representations of awakened body, speech, and mind, it's actually more meritorious, more virtuous to make offerings to practitioners, real, authentic, genuine practitioners. The reason is because you get both the merit of making the offering and also the merit of the fact that they use the offering. They make use of the offering. So if we make offerings to that kind of sublime object, this is a form of generosity.
begin to this Kalisham Bashadari Jidis Kamla Gendu Dege Dombaya Boson Tosam Yaboten Companyamsu Yamsu Len Tenima Lopucholo Tambishu Yapotan, that in the Nano. This agitated but in Jeti Kabla Shama, Woman, Norma, Negiore. That is again do Gidella Chowa Pukela, Maru Doyore, Chochin and Nesuyapuri, Gendula Chowa Negur Pukin, Maru Doyore. Yena Gendu ke Tamborte, Tashara, Jegi Omari, Tinagachumbachore, Gendu, Galon Pada, Galon Ma. Huh? Niga.
The presence of the monastic Sangha, the noble Sangha, in our world is so important. It's so important that we have the presence of the monastic community in our world, that they maintain their vows, that they learn, that they contemplate, and that they apply what they have learned and contemplated in meditation practice and teach the Dharma. If that happens, if the monastic community is maintaining their practice in that way, then that means that the Buddha's teachings will remain in our world in a very genuine and authentic way, and that's really important. These days, on the one hand, we have more and more people who are offering to support the livelihood for the monastic Sangha. There's more and more people who want to make offerings to support monastics. On the one hand, that's really nice because there's a lot of offerings made to support the monastic community. But on the other side, the number of monastic practitioners is not really increasing that much. And that's a danger, actually. That's danger. It's a danger. And I'm speaking here both about monks and nuns. We need both. It's really important.
Ani choba de jimba jimba soli tangore Ulshu Pongba, Yangenko Upong, Banjorko Umpong. Ulshu Pongba Mamboy, Rig Mamboy, Simcom Medeva Lasova, Kanda Khan Chinichi, Mebola, what Jimatayori, Yobola Jimatayori. Teach Jimbati, Kari Jimbarasana, Sansiki Jimbati, Lucho al Pengere, Sansinorki Jimba, Minji, my. Ufung serkere, sansi norji jimba, ulshi pumba, laso ba selkere. Menji jab jimba teke so jabkere. Tata jimba tamchi nana cho choba tamba cho jimbare. Tambi cho jimba te cho imba jumsan kare san tele tene tarabata tamchi jimba kompa topkere la dungar tamchi segere. Teso da tetabuki jimba kantutu tangware la. Titang kapsul len le rewa me bata kapsul bar. Dor de len ma nga jipa tang de nga chupo ju chona nga nyanda chupo ju chona samba la so ba ta paru tu chim ja chimpa ta chutu so tu ganga len le rewa cha yo ko shempe ke sim ke ya da bi chi so ko de jipa ta ta te na shu ngo jipa tang ta ya le sen na da yo na 탑가리야 탑선다요 상 당야로 술 당야로 네 mikpate야 뭐 쟤는 나는 상을 때네 야 권쇼 녀봐 대라시 대지 대신 중부 접받체 다 진짜 망보지게 되는 되게 롭도 그래 대신도 술 Te le lavare, de nyunyure, ngobo mambo gomare, ta tezo jimpe tere, tenresina jimpa paya te kalchipa tang, ha? Ten chutim sunya kalchipa, ta chutim yang tapa te kalech sung tugure, sana, chutim yang tapa sung tugure, cawa te nyingjul tugure. Changsem yuan na chiche gevele, chanchu sem yaku, che yuan na, Jimba te tangere, chutum te sungere, soba te gungere, jundu te zambere, nyambare tele te shatore, chunji neluya totore. Te songza, the top shinani, that the Tusu Dangamento, top chickty, Kari said. Chanshu Simrabachi, Serata, Ju Choni, Choni, Yapo, just on Jukente, Yantabachi, Kulum Matape, Kulum Mandevachi, Yapata, Tapata, Kurdi, Tindrik Churdalia, Papa, Tindresona, the Yantape Chagayomari, Yantape Paradisha to Chagayoma, Yantape Choni Saksu Chagayoma. The Mesa be Jumse Karasada, then that Dorna Jive Church at the Jayur. That Teletap Kariore Teletap Kariors and the top tick that draw Chanjusan, that the Kalsumbashara. Tan Dorna Chanjusan, the Yapo, Julie Jenna. Dikpa tipangare, dikpa tata gosum ji lenge ba tamji tipangare. Gosum ke ne jasi chanju se bicho ba chuchu sangpa tamji tilten. Lesa te shazun dorna dikpa ya tita, cho ya tisa. Doni ya tilten no to. So so tro chanju semseng shira khalsu. What is this miracle again? We're not here before, now we're here.
I mentioned song and sur, and then all of a sudden there's these melodies appearing in the world. So when we talk about generosity and offerings, to whom should we practice generosity? Well, we can practice generosity to those who are lacking, to those who are impoverished. And there's different ways in which people could be impoverished. Some people lack education, some people lack material goods and wealth. There's a lot of things that we could give to others. There's a lot of types of generosity. Some people are unhappy. We can give them something that brings them happiness. So actually generosity is something that can be practiced towards those who are poor, but it also can be practiced towards those who have wealth. You can practice generosity towards those people too. Because again, there's different kinds of generosity. There's the generosity of material goods, and the generosity of material objects is beneficial to support those who lack those things, right? It's helpful in sustaining our physical body, in dispelling the poverty and so on. But there's also the generosity of giving protection from fear, protecting someone's life if their life is in danger. But the best kind of generosity is actually the generosity of giving the sacred Dharma. And the reason why this is the best generosity, the most supreme generosity, is because when we give someone the sacred Dharma, this establishes them on the path that leads to liberation and omniscience, and that then becomes a way for all of their suffering, every bit of their suffering, to be completely cleared away. And so it's very important that we practice generosity, but when we do so, it's also extremely important that we do that without having any hope for a reward from our generosity. So if we think, oh, I'm going to be generous because I want to get rich, or I'm going to be generous because I want to become famous, and so on, that's a mistaken attitude. And this is the case actually for all of the 6 perfections, whether it's generosity or discipline or patience or whatever we're practicing. It's so important that we practice the 6 perfections without some kind of hope for a reward or a result to come from our practice. And the way to make sure that we do this is to actually genuinely embrace our practice with bodhicitta. If we have genuine bodhicitta, then we will be able to be free from that type of hope for a reward. And if, for example, we're trying to practice generosity, but we have the difficulty of feeling stingy when it comes to giving away a lot of wealth, then there are other methods actually that we can use to practice generosity. Like we could practice sang, or we could practice sur, right? If we do a really good visualization and we make sang offerings very well, then we're actually making offerings to the 3 jewels, we're making offerings to all of the gods and spirits of the 8 classes, to the all of the different types of spirits, also to our karmic creditors and so on. And if we do sur offerings, it's also really easy to practice sur. You don't have to give that much, you don't have that many physical things that you have to prepare. It's not that long of a practice. It's a really easy way of practicing generosity. And being generous is really important for our practice. So is discipline. How can we make sure that we practice discipline in an authentic way? The root of authentic discipline is love and compassion and bodhicitta. If you have bodhicitta, everything you do is virtuous. Everything. And so this is actually the case for all of the perfections: generosity, discipline, patience, diligence, meditation, and the wisdom of giving rise to the wisdom that realizes the authentic natural state. And so this is actually one among the 4 causes for rebirth in Buddha Amitabha's pure realm. So another one of them is to give rise to precious bodhicitta. So the main cause, as I mentioned before, is the 2 accumulations. But the assisting factor to make sure that we're able to gather the accumulations very authentically and very well is to have a pure motivation. To not be caught up in the impure motivation of wanting fame and power and wealth and gain to come about from our practice. Because if we do that, then we're not able to practice the 6 perfections authentically, and we're not able to really gather the 2 accumulations authentically. Why? Because we're caught up in the motivation of the 8 worldly concerns. So what can we do to make sure that we don't get caught up in the motivation of the 8 worldly concerns? The method is this assisting factor of authentic bodhicitta. It's really important. If you give rise to authentic bodhicitta in your mind, then this itself will bring you to abandon misdeeds. All misdeeds, every negative action, every negative karma, you will completely and totally abandon all negative actions if you give rise to authentic bodhicitta. If we give rise to authentic bodhicitta, then all of our conduct will be virtuous. We'll be able to carry out all of the different aspects of bodhisattva practice in an authentic way. And so bodhicitta itself purifies our evil deeds. Bodhicitta itself gathers the accumulations. Bodhicitta itself will lead us to realize emptiness. And that's why this assisting factor of bodhicitta is so incredibly important.
The Mahayana, Tibet, and Chinese Dhamma followers, they were jealous. Then our Lokiteshvara. But sometimes we little bit not so clear. We not really study. We think our Lokiteshvara up there, each other, or Konyin Pusa, Oman Pime, Cherisi. Tichambal Rena, Ani, Chicken Kopapo, or Kichulu didn't overcharge.
If we place all of our hopes just in that, in them some outside figure, it's actually not any different than religions that believe the world was created by someone. It's important that we're able to make a distinction, that we're able to do something different. Who is Avalokiteshvara? The embodiment of compassion.
Ningji Jen Juken ki Jen Dava Chagla. Then Tony Tongban Yi Ngang Le, the Yigishilas over Hulas over the Tinicheris, Nangla Rashiba, the Sharson, some Tungomati, Tungoman, Jeris, Ningi Arangajuli, Ningi Avachicho, Ningi Savayore, Nina Ningi Chosolung, Risu. It's a monsoon key, she wanted to do ninja to pay top job. Nga, ne pama, nge putu, nge pinja, nge gasa, nge tila mato. Parme samjala nge jaya kalekabo, lakpar do dal nge jaya kalekabo. Oh, ta chere se ke tulu yobe ke nge chimbo se ma karuna se dranye parma kona nge siksunji goyore. Ta te chere se uetere, te songto ta nganzu chere se susu kongki semju tele jam nge chanju semde yakpochi julin jowa jowa ina. Ta tuantambi chere se tere la, tele tene dipa tagado, tele tene so sagdo, tele tene te sanjo aba me shingal chegi, ta jutere ta salvado. Tele tene soni yawasa tagado. It's very logical. Actually, in the Western world, when we say Sukhavadi or Pyoram, a little bit sometimes uneasy. So we need to explain very clearly. So clearly means the Jushi, from Topshi. Jushi. Jushi the Jushi, it's a logical Jushi Chamna. If we want to board a Devachan, in our hand. Nobody's hand, our hand. If we ask the Buddha Bodhisattva teacher, so please take me Bodhisattva, Sukhavati, Pyoram, I give you billion, million, and no work. No work. No work. Only in your hand. If you want, first you need to get teaching clearly, logically, without doubt. Then you need to apply. 100% you will get Amitabha's pure. But if not clear, then there's doubt. Amitabha, Sanjay, Amitabha, Kande. Body, speech, mind, action is Chitang Tamalwaki Chuba. Chite Tamalwaki. Tamal was a shame, Tamabla Yomare. Chata Monsuki, want to draw thing. Chata also Chigi, need to take one John to water and Chitting by Lapkora, Malaptaya, Minkora. That you tender with you, ne? Tirawat, apartments, a couple of Java. Tinkor Kashi Dang, Dumba Kashi de Chomeda Vupar. Tindage, you tindage matter, Sa Matuna, the what in Singapore, Missy.
So if we just remain ordinary, and so ordinary here means falling under the sway of attachment and anger and stupidity, right? That's what it means to be ordinary, to just let our thoughts of attachment and aggression and stupidity follow one after the other. That's what we call an ordinary person, a worldly person. And if our view and our action is that, if that's what we're doing, just caught up in the negative emotions all the time, but what we hope for is to take rebirth in Buddha Amitabha's pure realm, and then we think that we can just recite a few malas of mantra, maybe make a few prayers, occasionally light a butter lamp. You think just that is going to be the cause for taking rebirth in Buddha Amitabha's pure realm? It's not going to happen. It doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way. So when we talk about Avalokiteshvara is the embodiment of compassion. And what is it that brings us to give rise to compassion? What is it that brings us to really cultivate that in our mind? Well, we can do practices like, for example, within the state of emptiness, bring to mind a seed syllable like Shri, for example, or Hung, and then out of that we envision that Avalokiteshvara appears in a form that is apparent and yet empty, and we visualize, right, Avalokiteshvara in that way. But actually, the ultimate Avalokiteshvara is when we give rise to real love and compassion in our own minds. When we give rise to that kind of authentic compassion. We all have the seed of that. We all have the seed of that. But the problem is that our compassion is one-sided. It's not extended towards everyone. We keep it only for some and not for everyone. It's limited. It's limited and it's very basic. And so the reason for that actually is because it's always connected to me, my parents, my children, my relatives, the person that I like. It's all connected to me. And so then that means it's limited. And it's really hard for us even to give rise to authentic compassion to a stranger. Forget about an enemy. Even to a stranger it's difficult because all of our compassion is so limited. It's directed only at those who we love and care about. The compassion that's present in Avalokiteshvara's heart and mind, that great compassion, is completely unbiased. It is extended to friends, to strangers, to enemies alike. And when we give rise to that kind of authentic compassion, genuine compassion in our own mind, that is the real Avalokiteshvara. Real love, real compassion, and real bodhicitta in our own mind, that is the ultimate Avalokiteshvara. And that itself purifies our obscurations. That itself gathers the accumulations. That itself brings about rebirth in Buddha Amitabha's pure realm. It's really easy. It's really straightforward. It's really logical, right? That itself is what brings us to gather the two accumulations in an authentic way. And then that therefore brings us to take rebirth in Buddha Amitabha's pure realm. Very straightforward, very logical, very clear.
저 손이 손주 이양다 보지 그런 손주 냠림 뼈다 보 이양다 보지 냠술랑하다 짜와테레 얘나야 됐다 보고 이양다 보 냠술랑라야라 답 발제 망보여 그래 발제 탐제기 윤례잘때 도터레 도창주심들이 도창주심지 시심비게 손이 손주다 손이 손주 이양다고 뼈다고 손이 또 붙여서야 쳐요. 다티니 상처도 단 현단이들 내려 버려. 즉 답답시 포사지 걸어. 남시 포세게 신감대 닭비 신감 산저밤에 신감대 되게 되네 거바티 이 상당대 예라 템보지 샤르트바지 용고로 대소서 신주 대답하게 닭비 신게 그래서 거바타다 나라기 이게 일로라 샤르트바지 마쇼바도 공고르다.
So the cause, the main cause, is to gather the two accumulations as a unity. And if we want to practice this very authentically, to really genuinely gather the two accumulations, the root, this is like the root cause for taking rebirth in Buddha Amitabha's pure realm. But there's a lot of obstacles that can get in the way of being able to do that. And the best remedy to conquer and overcome all of those obstacles is bodhicitta. It's the assisting factor of bodhicitta.